right, everyone, you are listening to the Minding Mind podcast, where we live life with ease, connection, and permission to just be. I'm your host, Evelyn LeVasseur. Welcome back to another episode. Today, I get to sit down with a special guest. His name is David Lee, and we're going to talk all about how men and women find peace and purpose through masculine and feminine energetic healing. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about David. So together with his wife, Paige, they help men, women, and couples find deep freedom, healing, and transformation from past emotional pain and trauma. David leverages his 30 plus years of expertise in relationships, wellness, and communication, along with his wife, to bring empowered awareness and true emotional healing to his clients that break negative patterns to realize real, life-changing, and extraordinary relationships. I am excited to get into this conversation. David, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. I am thrilled to have this conversation.
As am I. So before we get started, how about you just tell us a little bit about you and maybe something you want us to know?
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife and I identify ourselves in our coaching practice as trauma-informed polarity coaches, which is a mouthful. In essence, what we do is, as you described in the introduction, is we help men and women and couples, but we do that, by the way, individually, which I can get into later. We help them begin to identify and validate their internal wounding, trauma from childhood that is still preventing them from realizing the relationships of their dreams. First and foremost, the relationship that they have with themselves, which that's why we work with individuals. Now, I work with couples, but I work with them individually because we believe in sovereignty and autonomy. And even though you may be in a committed marriage or relationship, it is imperative that you remain who you are forever and always. And I see your smile coming across. Yeah, I agree with that, because oftentimes we have been told through cultural, societal, religious narratives that two shall become one, and that we're to be a couple and we do everything together and we live together and we breathe together and we have the same interests. And what happens too often is enmeshment and codependency then come forward in relationships. And so we help people first begin to understand, oh, wait, this is my internal journey. This is my trauma history. And it's no wonder that so many folks are so confused and frustrated within a relationship, because what we're doing in essence is we're taking two individual histories, two trauma histories, and throwing them together and thinking that Can't Buy Me Love and all those Hallmark cards and movies and 50 Shades of Grey will help improve our relationship, when in reality it's an individual, sovereign, autonomous journey, and we help them navigate that pathway to healing.
I love every word you just spoke, because I think that's the actual lesson that I've learned in my life. Like, I got married thinking you complete me and we're going to be happy forever because the marriage is just the beginning of our story. And, it's just going to be great. But it was a matter of me really believing at that time that it was his job to make me happy and my job to make him happy. And as long as we did that, we'd be fine. But the fact is that human beings evolve. What makes you happy is completely different, and it's nobody else's responsibility to give you that, right? So owning my happiness and owning the things that make me feel fulfilled has been key in growing my marriage. But I would love for you to start with, how did you even get into this journey, thinking of your role specifically as an individual? Because I will say this, the way you said that people are kind of bred to believe that you become one. I also believe that individually, women are taught that the ultimate value of your worth is in what you do for other people. And listening to you speak is it feels empowering almost, because the majority of the men in my life lead with this idea that providing is partnership. So there's very little of that self-reflection and looking to connect deeply and emotionally. So where did you even get that? And that is huge. And how do you begin to bridge that?
Yeah, I too was fed and ingested so much of, again, cultural and societal and religious narratives that said partnerships is where it's at, and that we are to hold one another's pain, We are to hold one another's happiness. We are to ensure that we make one another happy. In fact, I was in a relationship years and years and years ago, and we began dating. And she looked at me one night and she said, I know it is your responsibility to make me happy.
Mhm.
And I thought in that moment that felt incredibly dysregulating and
Mhm.
off. And yet, because of my history of being in codependent relationships, I thought, maybe she's right. And so it's my responsibility to make her happy. It's her responsibility to make me happy. When in reality, the only responsibility that we have as individuals is to ensure that we are healing, growing, and transforming, period. So where does all this come from? It comes from my own journey of recognizing I think I have been on the other side of a polarized relationship, masculine and feminine energy. I spent 30 plus years of my adult history in relationships in my wounded feminine energy, not my masculine energy, and did not even understand those terms until several years ago, where I felt like I was supposed to be the nice guy. I was supposed to be the guy that gets along and provides an opportunity for a woman to feel empowered, for a woman to take control back, perhaps. I wanted to be the perfect answer to the quote misogynistic, toxic masculine man, which we don't even use that phraseology in our coaching practice, toxic masculinity, because masculinity is not toxic.
Mhm.
It's powerful and engaging, and it's full of leadership and devotion
Yeah.
and decisiveness and reliability. Well, I was introduced or thought masculinity is bad.
Mhm.
That's what I thought. And I thought, I don't want to be a part of that. So, unbeknownst to me and my nervous system, I engaged and thought, oh, I'm going to live a life of softness, of surrender, of allowing my wife, my girlfriend, my partner to join me in making decisions about life. When in reality, I was waiting for her to take care of me. Why is that? That's all my trauma wounding from childhood. I lost my mother when I was just 2 weeks old. Never knew my mother. Well, that has significantly drawn boundaries and lines for my life, if I allowed it to, and I certainly did. And what I realized was I spent most of my adult life in relationships trying to save my mother by providing a way for the women to retain autonomy and control and power because my mother didn't have any.
Wow.
And so when I began to realize that, whoa, now this was all in the midst. In fact, when Paige and I met, we were inverted. I was more in my feminine, she was more in her masculine. And we often get the question, so can this turn around? Because we have so many folks who come to us and go, the woman will say, I feel like the man, and my husband's the woman. Can that turn around? And the answer is unequivocally, absolutely, without question,
Yeah.
yes, because
Yeah.
we are evidence of that. So how did I get into this space? Rugged, my own journey, my own pain, realizing turning my pain into purpose, and realizing how powerful masculine and feminine energy opposites do attract. In fact, if we don't have polarity, we fall off the planet. North
Mhm.
and South Pole, magnetism. So when we fully engage with the understanding that there is a masculine energy and there is a feminine energy, and
Mhm.
when those are aligned and in a healthy space, look out because that relationship will flourish.
For the people who have not been introduced, I'm no it's masculine and feminine energy, I feel like are buzzwords that are being thrown around a lot, but there's
Yep.
not a whole lot of understanding. Can you give us a little more detail on?
Yeah, absolutely. I will. I'm going to do a little cheat sheet here.
Yeah.
I'm going to provide, and we leverage these lists. So if you're listening, obviously you're listening because you're hearing our voice. So as you're listening to this, I invite you all to take a pen and paper out and jot down some of these energetics. So what I'm going to describe, Evelyn, is behaviors and feelings that are aligned with masculine and that
Okay.
are aligned with feminine.
Mhm.
Okay. And this is our baseline. All right. So, for example, masculine energy, healthy masculine energy involves things like focus, confidence, power, authoritativeness, not authoritarian,
Mhm.
resolve, humility, generosity, logic, stability, courageousness, providing safety, assertiveness, groundedness, resiliency, protection, purpose driven, strong mentality, hold space, directedness, integrous, teacher, takes action, listener, reliability, devoted, structured, consistent, contemplative, takes responsibility, aware, discerning, and decisive.
Wow.
That is masculine energy.
Okay.
Now, and I'll describe here in just a moment the listing of our feminine energetic. How we begin with so many of our clients is they come to us and go, this energy thing, much like maybe your listeners are thinking right now, like, what energy? I haven't even thought about it. Is that woo? Is that weird? Is
Mhm.
that true? Well, that's what I thought too. We take our clients through an exercise for them to identify their core energy. Everyone has a core energy. Everyone on the planet has a core energy. We all also have both masculine and feminine energy. Everyone. This has nothing to do with gender.
Right.
Nothing. So every soul on the planet, however you identify, we all possess masculine and feminine energy. Why it's important for each individual with whom we're working to identify their core energy, that's our baseline for them to feel safe and home. So when I began this process myself and went through this exercise that we take our clients through now, I realized, oh my goodness, I want to be in my masculine, powerful energy, and I'm not.
Mm.
Whew. That was a huge aha moment. And we find those aha moments with our clients consistently. Like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, this is where I want to be. And we consistently find those who come for help and support with us are men who are in their feminine energy and women who are in their masculine energy. Well, of course. And I'll highlight a couple of things here in just a moment if it comes back up energetically. But there are reasons why men in their, and I'll describe this in just a moment, why men in their wounded masculine energy and women in their wounded feminine energy do not come for help. And I'll explain that in just a moment. So let me go through the list of the feminine, because I know everybody is at bated breath waiting for the list of feminine.
Yeah.
So here is feminine. This is feminine energy. So if you are a woman who's listening right now and knows, I want to be a woman. I want to return to the little girl that I've lost. I want to be playful. I want to be radiant, beautiful, and sensual and sexual. That's feminine energy. Along with everything that I'm about to say, sensitive, receptive, creative, curious, connecting, compassionate, a learner, being, huge. The masculine man does, the feminine woman bees.
Mm.
Bees. Learner, being, expressive, intuitive, authentic, vulnerable, playful, restful, secure in her body,
Mm.
asking for wants and needs through I feel statements. Appreciates the process, fluid, speaks truth, is sexy and flexible and empathetic and sharing and creates community and speaks with love, radiant and sensual, wise, patient, and flirtatious. That is feminine energy.
That list felt like a warm hug.
Exactly. Exactly. Precisely. And that, I would offer to you, Evelyn, is evidence that your core energy
Mm.
is feminine.
Mm.
You want to be the woman that you were crafted to become.
Mhm.
And my guess is when I read the masculine energetics, your body probably responded to that as well in a
Mhm.
different way, in an attractive way, in a sensual way, in an arousing way, like that's what I want in a man. Exactly. Those will attract one another. Now, the other side of this is wounded energetics. And we all possess, every single one of us, elements of these wounded masculine and feminine energetics. All of us do. And that is the course to heal. So, for example, masculine wounding, I won't go through the entire list, but you'll get the idea very quickly. Forceful, dominating, overthinking, overdoing, coercive, inconsistent, controlling, argumentative, overgiving, knower, not a learner. Impulsive, vengeful, proving of self, judgmental, reactive, defensive, attached to achievement, need to be right, fear of failure, lacks trust, avoidant, petty, manipulative, rejected, selfish, weak boundaries, dismissive. That is wounded masculine energy, not necessarily associated with male or man,
Right.
because what we've identified is that so many women are in their wounded masculine energy. Why? In order to survive.
Mhm.
Because once upon a time, as a little girl, she did not have the receptive, radiant opportunity, safety, security, and peace as a little girl to flourish into her feminine energy. So she had to wall up to protect herself. So she perhaps became controlling, became defensive, had to step into her masculine energy to get things done. So it makes sense. That's why I love doing this work, because I love working puzzles, Evelyn. And everybody is a puzzle. There are no extra pieces and there are no missing pieces. Everybody has precisely what they need. We simply help them find the pieces and interlock. And so often we don't even know where those pieces are, but they're there. Okay.
Yeah.
Wounded feminine energy, and then we can move on. Wounded feminine energy, low self-worth, afraid to speak up, easily attached, distracted, dissociated, victim mentality, martyrdom, passivity, wants to be saved, self-shaming, attracted to drama, codependent, over-apologizing, over-explaining, seeks external validation, fears being alone, people pleaser, disorganized, needy, anxious, gossipy, oversharing, and emotionally unavailable.
Mhm.
That is wounded feminine energy. And
Wow.
those two individuals will attract one another.
Mhm.
It's polarity. Opposites will always attract in all of life. In all of life. For example, this desk that I'm sitting at right now, this desk represents masculine energy. It's
Mhm.
strong, it's structured, it's got 4 legs. It's holding burdens of the computer and all the things here in the studio. If a leg falls off, it becomes unstable, it becomes chaotic, it becomes wounded feminine energy. And it's
Mm.
no longer able to prop up and hold space for the work that needs to get done here. Everything is polarity.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Conversations, words, relationships, sex, money, everything holds masculine and feminine energy.
I love your explanation of it because it seems so just clear cut. And I feel like it's such a beautiful way to have a starting point of like recognition to where you are and like where you want to
Yeah.
be. And I also love that like you just having this list and recognizing that maybe those are characteristics you have. That doesn't mean that that is who you are. It just reminds me of when I'm coaching women, we do a lot of like work around worthiness and
Mhm.
body confidence.
Mhm.
And so much of what we focus on is recognizing that our behaviors are just data, right? It's that
Mhm.
like if we could remove judgment from ourselves, then the work gets that much clearer. And I feel like that seems a lot of what you're doing is releasing the judgment of it all and just accepting this is where I am and this is where I want to be. So how do you take someone from where they start or, that
Yeah.
recognition to like, how do you move them through the process?
Yeah. We leverage a primary healing modality known as IFS, internal family systems, or as some folks know it, parts work. We believe that every single soul is a multiplicity. We all have parts of us, and those parts are the wounded children from our past. And when we are triggered in adulthood, it's our wounded child saying, hello, pay attention to me. Where you at? I need attention. And it often comes forward in somatic symptoms, chronic pain,
Mhm.
depression, cancer. I will go on and on. We believe that everything that happens to our body, the body keeps a score, as our mentor Bessel says. Everything is stored in the body. So trauma, although trauma is not an event, it is what happens after or doesn't happen after. So we believe that trauma happens only in childhood, only. And that what we experience in adulthood is actually an echo of an unprocessed traumatic wound from childhood. For example, people will say, well, I didn't experience trauma until I went away to war and saw my buddy get blown up. Our contention is that your choices to enter the military were based on a traumatic wound from childhood that was not healed. So that you were led to be in an environment where that trauma could take place.
Mhm.
Now we're back to personal responsibility. Everyone is responsible for the choices that they make. Everyone's responsible for the relationship that they're in. And ultimately, when we're healing, there are no surprises. Oftentimes, we have folks who will say, well, I had no idea he was this way. I had no idea he was a narcissist. I had no idea she was this. You did. But your parts, the wounded parts of you, were attached to their wounded parts. And that's what we refer to as a trauma bond. And so we choose our partners who will reveal our deepest wounds. So when we say, well, I had no idea, and wow, I'm this and I'm that, and they were doing this and they were doing that. Well, it's evidence of deep wounding when we transfer blame and responsibility to someone else without looking in the mirror. And
Yeah.
that's really hard. Believe me, I spent, again, the vast majority of my adult life in relationships blaming everybody else, not taking responsibility, having the pity party, pointing my finger. It wasn't until I stopped looking out the window and started looking in the mirror that I realized, oh, it's me. As Taylor Swift says, oh, it's me. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. We love Taylor. Yeah, we love Taylor. We're Swifties. Well, my wife is a Swiftie, and I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, so things are good for us. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So how that all came together. So it wasn't until I realized, oh, I have complete autonomy and sovereignty over the choices that I make. No one has any type of control over any choice I ever make. That provides an enormous amount of so much of this work and how we take our clients through the process is we lead them into this understanding that you're not broken. You're not a hot mess. You're not effed up. There are parts of you that are carrying the burdens of the traumatic wounding that hasn't been allowed to be released from your body from childhood. So the reason why you're experiencing betrayal in your adult relationships is because the betrayal wound, the little girl or little boy that was betrayed at 7 years old, is still being betrayed over and over and over and over. And it's not until we begin to build a new relationship, literally a relationship, from the adult David, in this case, to the little David that was betrayed once upon a time. And when we begin to build that relationship and simply engage with that little boy, saying things like, I see you, I understand, tell me more. How can I help? What do you need right now? I can understand why you're angry and frustrated. When we begin to have those conversations, literally have those conversations with the part of us that's coming forward. And how do we know we have parts? Because they keep coming forward and we say things like, there's a part of me that doesn't want to do that. Where did that come from? Who learned that language? It's just part of our vernacular.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Richard Schwartz, who developed the theory of IFS, internal family systems therapy, in the 1980s, began to realize that his patients kept using that vernacular, saying, there are parts of me that feel this. And what was often in the past diagnosed as multiple personality disorder, what he realized was it's not a disorder. It's simply we are all composed of a multiplicity of parts. That's why it's called internal family systems. We have a family within us.
100%.
Absolutely.
While you were speaking, it brought up something that I had like this vivid image. I have two daughters. One is 15 and the other is turning 12 today. And I remember us chatting at the table one day, and the conversation was difficult, but open, and watching them speak and seeing the comfort in their eyes of actually being heard and knowing that their voices were important. Oh, that brought up something for me so big. And it was instant where growing up, I felt loved. I didn't feel heard. My opinion was not relevant. But sitting there with them, I swear to you, I could visualize a little 7-year-old Evelyn saying, thank you. And after the conversation, and I hugged my daughters, it was relief for them and knowing that this generational issue stopped with me. But also there was that little part of me that just felt like released and relaxed. So like watching my children, or knowing that I'm changing the trajectory of conversation and relationship for my daughters, is simultaneously healing parts of me that I didn't recognize were still making their way out. And they are.
They are. Yeah, that's a brilliant observation, Evelyn, is that our children are mirrors of us as well. And what's interesting is as I teach on our specific modality, and we've taken Richard Schwartz's work and built upon it, is when people have perhaps a struggle, and there may be listeners listening to this right now thinking, parts, what? Is if you have children, you can relate to your parts very quickly because our parts act like children. Why? Because they are. So it's a 7-year-old who never got what she needed and wanted. She never was validated. She never was seen. She never was understood. She was never given a voice. And perhaps her innocence and her opportunity were taken from her. And she was never allowed to be a little girl. And so she had to grow up very, very quickly. Men can be the same way. Little boys can be the same way. So often, trauma can be further identified and fleshed out as this. It's when your nervous system is simply overwhelmed. Falling off your bike at 7 years old and skinning your knee is trauma. Whenever your nervous system is overwhelmed. Now here's the difference. You fall off your bike, you skin your knee, and you're all alone. And no one's there to help support you, ask you if you're okay, bandage you up. This is an example of how then that trauma will remain in your nervous system forevermore and says, I'm abandoned when I'm hurt. Oh, and you will begin to attract individuals, your nervous system will, the parts of you will begin to attract people who will reflect that. Because why? It feels familiar.
Mhm.
And familiarity is the food, the feast of our parts that are wounded. Our parts are incredibly myopic. They only see one thing, but yet they have a positive intent, which is really interesting. So much of healing modalities out there say, oh, just ignore the voices, dismiss the voices, and leverage narratives like this. Time heals all wounds. Ladies and gentlemen, time doesn't heal wounds. Work heals wounds. Engaging with those parts, loving those parts, honoring those parts. Because just like our children, our earthly children, when they're very little and they want our attention, you remember this, Evelyn, when your girls wanted your attention and you were like, I'm exhausted, get off my leg, I'm going to put you in a closet. And truthful parents will say amen to all of that. It's okay, parents. It's okay not to like your children sometimes. Can I get an amen? So,
Amen.
yeah. What happens when we ignore our children when they're young? What happens when we dismiss them? What happens if we don't listen to them? They keep coming at us. Mom, mom, mommy, mom, dad, 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 daddy. It's the same with our parts. They
Mhm.
will continue to come forward somatically. Triggers, as they're often called. When you feel triggered, it's important to know no one triggers you. You are triggered. Absolutely. But that trigger has nothing to do with the person that's in the room with you. It has nothing to do with your spouse. It is an echo of an unprocessed wound from long ago. Your husband is simply projecting and bringing it forward for you to take a look at. Oftentimes, my wife says this so brilliantly. Triggers are simply a warning light on your dash that says, oh, we need some help. We need to go to the service station. And oftentimes, what do we do with those service lights, Evelyn?
Ignore 'em.
Yeah, but
Ignore
they
'em.
will not go away, just like our children and just like our parts.
So if someone is in like the thick of this, right? I can imagine like for myself and the work that I do is a lot of like recognizing the stories. I think at this point in my marriage, I can say to my husband, I'm feeling this way because this behavior you did literally, and I can say it triggered the story I have in my mind. And I recognize that story is for me to handle, right?
Mhm.
But I also need to make you aware of that behavior. So when someone is in the thick of it and they're starting to recognize these triggers and they're starting to recognize the stories, what's an action step that they can take to help release that and start a new level of healing?
Yeah, it is simply beginning the conversation, which can sound odd, which can say, wait a minute, I'm talking to myself? Yes, actually, you're talking to yourself, which I've talked to myself my whole life. So it's really not unusual for me to be speaking to my parts. So the easiest way is when you feel that trigger. And then we also help our clients identify where in the body they're feeling it. And that matters. I won't get into the depths of all that, but it matters. And so you can literally put your hand on that part of you to show it love,
Mhm.
honor, acceptance, validation, to be seen and heard and understood. That is a very simple step. You don't have to say anything. Just acknowledge and recognize internally, I see you. I'm here. Because our parts that are screaming so loudly and coming forth as a trigger simply want attention. So if we provide them attention and validation, isn't it amazing when you validate somebody's opinion at the office? When you validate somebody's opinion on social media, heaven forbid. Imagine, imagine if the political landscape in this particular country, where people came together and said, oh, you're voting for so and so? I'm not voting for that person, but I'm interested in knowing why you're voting for them. Tell me more. Help me understand. Why is that important to you? Imagine if we had that type of dialogue all the time. Well, that's why Paige and I are doing this to build a healing community to where we are curious far more than we're ever critical.
I love that.
To say, I see you, I hear you. When we criticize our parts, when we dismiss them or move on to something else, and we create bypass and circumvention strategies like breath work, Reiki, yoga, ayahuasca, getting on a treadmill, going on vacation, having more children. Now, all of those, exactly, all of those things can be helpful to prepare your body for healing. But ladies and gentlemen, yoga will not heal your trauma. Neither will a trip to Peru and ayahuasca. It may provide an opening for your body to receive this type of connection.
Mhm.
But it's not until we acknowledge the original wounded parts when they come forward and are triggered in our body and we feel super pissed off at our husband, it is our responsibility to go, I am triggered. And how we teach, Evelyn, just to get down in the weeds a little bit, how we teach our female clients who identify their core energy as feminine is we instruct them on how to express their wants and needs through I feel statements without using you statements to their spouse. I feel disregarded when I felt this. Now notice, there's no you there. There's no accusation. There's no pointer. What we also know about polarity and masculine energy is that masculine men, masculinity, doesn't ever want to be told what to do. That's where we get this term nag. That's where we get this naggy and pushy and controlling. And
Yeah.
yes, now why does a woman do that? Because she's fed up, because
Yeah.
she's frustrated, because she wants action, because we want him to do what he said he was going to do.
Mhm.
And yet he's not doing it. Well, he's not doing it because of his wounding. It has nothing to do with you. So
Yeah.
you continuing to press him and tell him what to do and suggest
Yeah.
a way. Hey, babe, we should go to that marriage counseling seminar, and slide the brochure across the table.
Mm.
And a man will run from that every single time. I often say this, and it can be incredibly triggering for both men and women, especially wives. Men will never, ever, ever do anything until they have leverage. A man will never do anything until they are brought to a level of their own leverage to make a change. This is why so many women are so frustrated, because they're healing, they're growing, they're transforming, and they want their husband to step up and feel and leverage and heal his wounds and become the man that she knows he could be. As I often say, please don't fall in love. Please do not fall in love with potential. And yet it happens.
Mhm.
So many women are wanting to save and fix men. Why? That's their wounding.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
he needs to be 6. Oh, I know I'm the perfect woman for him.
Mhm.
If I just give him 6 more months.
Yeah.
If
So
I just give it. Yeah.
how do you guide one person in the relationship
Mhm.
who is on board with the modalities that you teach,
Mhm.
being in partnership with someone who isn't?
It's incredibly challenging. Incredibly challenging. Which goes back to our autonomy model.
Mm.
It says this has nothing to do with your spouse. And that is an enormous hurdle for people to get over, Evelyn, is, well, wait a minute. If he's not doing the work, then why am I doing it?
Yeah.
So many relationships, in fact, the vast majority, the data suggests, the vast majority of relationships in general are transactional. If you do, then I will. If I get a she shed, then I get a man cave. If you
Mhm.
go out with your buddies on a fishing trip, then I get to go on a girls' night out. You fix the dishwasher, then I'll have sex with you. It's transactional. That is not a part of a healthy, polarized relationship.
No.
It is not about equity. And here's another triggering, potentially, it is not about a partnership. Because in polarity, the masculine has a completely different energetic than the feminine. The
Mhm.
masculine leads, gives, and provides. The feminine does not. The feminine receives it all. So much of women's wounding is dealing with the fact that they are terrified to receive,
Mm.
because once upon a time they did and it didn't feel good.
Mm.
So now they're skeptical. When's the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah.
And so now you have this mass chaos. And so the default mechanism in most marriages is, well, let's just keep it equal. I'll take care of the kids, you make the money. Cool. Well, that's not polarity at all.
Mhm.
So, and now I've forgotten your original question.
Me too.
Okay.
That's
Well,
okay.
there you go. Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like that is the perfect equation that just results in like resentment and unmet needs. That whole
absolutely.
like, give and take and push and pull and yeah, that's a whole lot. I love the work that you're doing. I love the simplicity that you explain it in because it makes what could be a very difficult thing to understand just seem very like reasonable for the average person who hasn't studied this. You're like, oh, I get it. I can see myself when he's speaking. I can hear those things. Amazing. So tell me, why don't you tell us a little bit about, is there anything that you're working on right now, or where could people find you if they wanted to reach out or follow your work?
Absolutely. You can find us all over the socials, Evelyn. So we have a really incredible, robust following on TikTok, my TikTok specifically. So go there, you will receive daily videos of my teachings and ramblings and all of that. That's where most of our clientele actually comes from.
Awesome.
So and then we're also on Instagram, where there's some duplication there, Facebook, YouTube, all the socials. Our website is daring-deeply.com. I'll say it again, daring-deeply.com. Make sure you have the dash. I'm not sure where daringdeeply.com will take you. So I have no responsibility if it lands you in a site that you don't know why you're there.
I'll make sure to link the right links in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. So reach out to us. You can reach out to us through the socials, through email addresses. What I will highlight is the way that we direct our folks, potentially prospective clients, to us, is we have them, men, complete what we call our masculine energy and healing assessment.
Mm.
And we have a feminine energy and healing assessment for women.
Mm.
It is a 100 questionnaire that they can download and answer all the questions about their past, their present, their future, their relationship with mom and dad and siblings, their relationship with sex and intimacy, and many of those aspects of wounded masculine and wounded feminine energetics. In other words, it's giving them a baseline for them to understand where they're starting from when they're ready to really begin this healing journey. Then what happens is those assessments then come to us, and they have an opportunity to jump on a 30-minute consultation with either Paige or myself. And then we provide expert recommendations on what their next steps will be with our programs, or if they choose not to work with us, that's great too. But it's a foundational first step into their healing journey. It's called the Masculine or Feminine Energy and Healing Assessment. And you can access that on our website, TikTok, Instagram, all the things.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link everything. David, this was such a good conversation. It was so eye-opening for so many different things. I did not recognize how many characteristics I shared in both the feminine and the masculine, but how much my body reacted to into calm state when you talked about that feminine list. Like when you read that masculine list, I could feel myself sit up a little bit taller, and I can feel myself like kind of embody the power that you talked about. And then when you talked about the feminine list, I was like, oh, but yes, but also yes, right? I love that. And this was really eye-opening for me, thank you. Before I let you go, I've got to ask you the difficult question of the day. And the difficult question is, in the Minding Mind community, we're all about being intuitive, listening to those gut instincts, going all in, taking responsibility for your life. So the question is, how does minding mine or minding yours change the legacy that you will leave behind?
We have what we've identified as 10, what we call guidelines of engagement. It's kind of our 10 commandments of our coaching practice of life. And one of them, I didn't want to create and craft and put on this list because it's probably the one that I struggle with the most. And it is take nothing personal, which we stole directly from the Four Agreements, and fantastic book, by the way. It is by far the most challenging aspect of personal development for me. I grew up in a world where everyone in my family took everything personal, and it mattered. What'd you say about me? What are you saying about her? Ouch, that hurt. For me to be in a transformative journey for myself to not take things personal, it goes all the way back into personal responsibility, that someone's opinion has nothing to do with me. And it's really helped incredibly being a public figure on social media, when I consistently will receive folks who don't agree with me and may resort to calling names. Just saying it happens. And it will continue to happen because people are wounded. And I understand that. So for me to stand in my resolute, to know that my business is my business. And when somebody comes at me, it's their wounding, and that's okay. And so to provide an atmosphere, and we mentioned this earlier, to where I'm curious before I'm critical, which is another one of our guidelines of engagement, I ask questions. So when someone comes at me in a defensive posture or an attacking posture, I simply ask questions. Tell me more. I can understand why you may think that. That's my answer, Evelyn.
I love that. And I absolutely love that curiosity before criticism. Like, that's so important to just pause and ask yourself, what is my intention in even asking these questions? I love that. David, thank you so much. This conversation was great. I know that it will impact people, and I will be sure to link everything in the show notes. I appreciate you being here today. And for
Absolutely.
everyone else, I thank you for joining me today and joining David as well and tuning into another episode of Minding Mine. If this episode resonated with you, please comment, rate, and review. You know that your feedback helps me grow. And until next time, I want you to go live your life on your terms and mind your business. We'll catch you in the next episode.